I want to do some more on the interior in my car here, particularly the headliner. Originally there was a flat plywood panel that was screwed into this plywood here, and it had pleated material on it, and it looked okay, but it kind of took away some of the ceiling height you had. And I'm looking, I've got this recess in here where the original roof line was, and this is a piece of plexiglass that holds up the Juliana soft top that I put on it. So what I think I might do is get me some plywood, and I'll try and build something a little different in there, something a little more than just a flat panel. This piece here will have to come out. I had mounted a sunglasses case on it. Here's a pattern that I made from the original piece of Luan paneling that was just screwed up into the ceiling, and it just gave a flat wooden surface up there. All the outside dimensions are appropriate, and it's got the right shape to it, so I use it to make a pattern for the new piece that I'll cut out of a new piece of Luan flooring. Here's my pattern laid out on the plywood. Here's the rough cut. I'll fit it up inside the cab now and screw it in place, and then measure how much opening I want in the middle for the recess. So I'll get in there and mark it off, and come back and cut it back out for the recess. Alright, here it is. I've got it screwed in place. It's not permanently, I don't have all the screws in it, I just put in enough to hold it in place so that I could make my marks to cut the inside opening the proper size. I've cut this block of wood to use as a guide. I'm going to lay it up inside the opening, push it up against the opening there, and then take a scribe and go along the edge of it and mark it all the way around. Just work my way all the way around the roof, and that way I will know how much opening to cut to get the recess in there. Here it is. I've got it screwed back up in place nice and tight. And you can see it has an arc. It has an arc across the left and the right, and then from front to rear there's a slight arc too. But now it's time for me to put my spacers in here. Here's the strip I've cut. If you remember, I had a 1 1/4 inch recess. I used my spacer to make a 1 1/4 inch recess in there. This is 1 inch wide, and it's the same thickness as the same piece of Luan, and I cut it against the grain so it'll be considerably more flexible. And now I can create that arch across the top. Gluing these in, they'll kind of act like springs. When I glue one in and it seals, I'll glue another one in on top of it, and then it'll kind of act like springs to hold that arch in place. I'll line the edges up there, glue it, and clamp it down and let it dry. And I'm going to use 2 layers of this because it'll give me the amount of relief I want in the ceiling. Give it that kind of a coffered look. Here's the first strip glued in place across the front. You can see it does still have its arc in there, so I'm hoping that when I take these clamps off and take it down, it'll still hold a little bit of that arc. When this dries, I've got one more to put on top of it so that the relief will be twice as thick as the thickness of the plywood that I used to make the panel with. I've got one layer of this spacer all the way around. I have two on the front. This is the front. There's actually two layers here, and I have one layer all the way around the perimeter of the recess. This is I have to start the two layers now. So there's one layer here. It seems to be taking the shape quite well, and I believe it will hold that arc. So when I take this out, it will continue this. It will stay arced just like the ceiling. This one's dry, so I can start taking these down and glue the second layer. I'm overlapping the corners where the boards come together. I'm overlapping them to give them a little more strength. Well, here it is, taken out. These are the corners. I want to round these corners off. This is the spacing that I put in there. I'm going to fill these corners here out before I round them off. And all I have to do is sand it down. You can see it's holding the curve shape pretty well. So it matches the roof line now. I sanded all the edges smooth and rounded them. And it's ready to put the upholstery on. I'll cut another piece of paneling, put on the back side of it. This part will be upholstered separately, and then I'll upholster this and then sandwich the two together, and it'll give me that relief along the edge as a recess in the ceiling. These nuts are on the bolts that go through the plexiglass, through this spacer, and then through this steel frame here to mount the plexiglass, hold the plexiglass in tight. If I put the panel up here, those nuts keep it held off the roof line by the thickness of the nuts. So what I do is go back and drill holes in the panel so that it'll fit flush up in there. The nuts will fall in line with the holes. Last time I had the panel up, I tapped on the panel to make dents in the panel to locate the nuts, and then I'll go back and drill them out so that they'll fit in there recessed. I installed it one last time to make sure that all the mounting holes and clearance holes lined up. I'll take it down now and put the upholstery fabric over it. My original plan was to take this old foam core sign and cover it in the material and then staple it to the back of this snugly, and that gives me that Crawford recessed look I was telling you about. But then I thought it might be a little nicer if I did something different, so I decided what I was going to try was this. I took my material down to the local upholstery shop and had them sew pleats in there 2.5 inches apart. So I think I'm going to use that as my insert now. But since I'm going to use the pleats, I think I want something a little more sturdy than foam core on the back of it. So I'm going to cut a 1/8 plywood panel that will actually screw down nice and tight. I got this piece of material here. It's some form of MDF. It's 1/8 inch thick and it's reasonably flexible. I marked the center here, and this is the center line of the upholstery. Well, here's the finished product. I took a pin, a needle, and stuck it through the back on the mounting holes to identify them up here, so I'll know where to put the screws in when I install it. I painted the screw heads, and I guess there's nothing left to do but put it in. And here it is finished. Next, I'll upholster this part here down to the door and this sail paddle back here. Thanks for watching.